next like to introduce Lisa Kaeser. Lisa is currently serving as the Director of the Office of Legislation and Public Policy at the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, NICHD, at the National Institutes of Health. She works as a liaison between NICHD's leadership and its many constituencies, which include Congress, the scientific and research advocacy communities, and the public, including the organizations that comprise the Down Syndrome Consortium, of which she is the executive secretary. She also was one of the 2 primary authors of DS Directions, the NIH research plan on Down syndrome, published in 2014. Prior to joining NICHD 17 years ago, Ms. Kaeser worked for over a decade in women's health research and policy issues at the Alan Guttmacher Institute, and before that, 3 years on Capitol Hill as a legislative assistant to Representative Jim Moody. In her other life, she has been a health counselor at the Washington Free Clinic and a health education teacher for 8th grade students, and is a certified parent educator. She has a law degree from Vermont Law School and did her undergraduate work at Dartmouth College. So welcome, Lisa.
Well, it is still morning, so good morning, everyone, and I'm sorry to hold you up from lunch. I do want to thank the sponsors, DS Indiana, NDSS, and DS360 for putting this on. This is the best turnout I've ever seen at any of these meetings, so thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Let me just say very quickly, so you've heard NIH talked about a lot today. NICHD, which is also named for Mrs. Shriver, is one of only 27 institutes and centers at the NIH. We do focus on child health and human development, and that's where the Down syndrome research comes in. But we actually now have in the Down syndrome working group, which I believe was on someone's slide, we have 10 institutes at NIH that are interested in some aspect of Down syndrome. Clearly, the National Institute on Aging, with whom we're partnering on a number of things, the Neurological Institute, the Dental and Craniofacial Institute, there are all kinds of interests. So we lead the group, but it is just one. So I want you to know that there's huge interest at the NIH in Down syndrome. So you've heard this many times today. I don't think I need to tell you why we need to be interested in research. And you've heard about the incredible increase in life expectancy. The real statistic is that since about 1960, it's increased by 496%. So that is a great tribute to families' care, frankly, the lack of institutionalization, and just the progress we've made in acceptance of people with Down syndrome and wanting to include them in our entire society. We also need to care about research because it's very important, and I am I should have also thanked Congress for funding the federal government for one more week because that allowed me to fly here yesterday. I couldn't have come otherwise. And so we really want our policymakers to have as much evidence to make their decisions as possible. So that's why we do research, because otherwise they're kind of working in a vacuum. You know, there are probably advocates, constituencies on just about every side of any political question. And so how do you know how to sort through that to make the best decisions? That's from research. So that's why we need to do this. And we depend a lot on groups like the National Down Syndrome Society to take that research and the messages we get from it to then go to the Hill, Capitol Hill, and make our best case. As a federal employee, I'm not allowed to do that. You'll see some very common themes, so I won't spend a ton of time on them. But this is some of the stuff we're funding right now, including some of those mouse models that you heard about so beautifully this morning. New outcome measures you just heard about again. We've had a couple of big meetings with all of these wonderful scientific experts to try to come to agreement on what would be the most effective measures for Down syndrome-related therapeutics. Early development of medications. We have a fairly new, just funded last year, a $37 million program that we funded along with the National Institute on Aging that is looking at the progression of Alzheimer's. We need to follow this, as Dr. had just said, longitudinally over time so that we can really see what that progression looks like. And we are doing that. We are looking for what another term that I don't believe you've heard this morning is biomarkers. And those are biological changes in the body that allow us to measure either progress in a health condition or deterioration in a health condition. And so once you have that, it really, really helps researchers to develop interventions, to develop treatments, and to also decide when, once we have those approved, when to start using them. So those are very helpful. You've heard mention, thank you, Vince, of the Down syndrome research plan. After the conference, I will send Stephanie the direct link to that plan, but at the end I'll show you another way to get there. Since I helped write it, I really tried to make it something that people could read. There's definitely a couple of sections that are about very basic science, but we really tried to make it accessible to everyone. And I so appreciate all the input we received from scientists, from families, from clinicians. That's what, for example, the Down syndrome on aging section was not in the 2007 plan, but we developed it for the 2014 plan because this is becoming a bigger issue for most people. And then what I really am here to talk about is the Down syndrome registry, which is the patient and family registry. And the reason we developed it, we've been talking about this since 2010, and we wanted to work very closely with the family-based organizations to develop this registry because obviously you guys know them the best. So this is a secure, confidential, online patient registry, participant registry, I should say. It collects some basic kind of survey-related information about a person's health, and we use it, ultimately, the exciting part is that we use it to help recruit for different kinds of studies. A lot of people, it's interesting, a lot of people think of studies as only being clinical trials, but there's a huge range of studies. There are studies that can look at just someone's blood. There are studies that can just be a survey response. There are all kinds of studies, and they all need participants. So that's what this helps us collect. We have a very secure, and I'll talk about that in a second, database. What we do, just so you know, and I will also talk about what you can get out of DS Connect, but the database, we have 2 research coordinators. They're the only ones who see the personally identifiable information. I want to make that super clear to everyone. We don't share that even with wonderful researchers like you have here at this conference. What we do is when they come to us, and Dr. Sherman is actually the chair of our research review committee, when they come to us with a research proposal that they have gotten funded, but they want DS Connect to help them recruit, our research coordinators review the whole database. They identify the families that might be eligible for such a study, and they send the families a message saying, if you are interested, here's the contact information of the researchers. That way, your information is not shared inadvertently. You make that decision. If it doesn't work for your family at that time in their lives, you don't have to participate. It's just your option. But it does allow you to participate in new studies and hear about them if, in fact, you are interested. So I wanted to be sure to explain that. Here's the homepage. Some of you may know the famous David Egan. He's fabulous, one of our best spokespeople. Not to read this because I realize it's a busy slide. We give you a lot of contact preferences that you can change at any moment. So again, if your family's going through kind of a busy time, you can say, no, don't contact me for a while, but you can also reopen it when you wish. This is the security slide. This is probably the biggest complaint we get, is that they have to change passwords every 10 months. But that's because this is a Federal Information Management Security Act safe site. And we had to develop the, pretty stringent requirements, including changing of passwords. But there's directions about what the password needs to include and that sort of thing. We do not collect Social Security or bank-related information. Now, DS Connect, let me just say, is not open at this very moment. We expect it to be back up and running in about a week, which we're very excited about. NIH imposed some new, NIH is getting used to being in the 21st century, so they were not used to electronic consent. Most informed consent, and you may have been through some of this, is when you're literally sitting across the desk from a researcher and you can go through it together and you can ask questions and that sort of thing. So electronic consent is a different type of doing business. So we had to close down until we updated our consent forms so that our institutional review board approved it and was comfortable with it. And I think that's all to the benefit of families. I just wanted to let you know why DS Connect isn't open, but will be very, very soon. These are some of the survey modules. The way it works is that we ask our participants, once they've consented, to fill out an initial health questionnaire with, I think it's about 40 questions. It's your basic health or the person with Down syndrome's basic health information. You may get some what we call trigger questions. So if you say, yes, my child had a heart condition at birth, you might get a little blurb saying, here's 6 more questions about that. But if your child didn't have that condition, you won't be bothered with those extra questions. So, and then we have some additional health questionnaires. You don't have to do these all at once at all. You can come back and do them at your leisure. What this does, though, is it allows you to have all of your child's health information kind of in one nice place at one time. So that say you go see a new specialist for some condition, you can just download it and take it with you. You don't have to kind of redo it every time. These were also the most common conditions that we heard about from families that they wanted us to collect information on. Even if you choose never to participate in a trial, the information is still very valuable to us, because what we do is we aggregate it all, we de-identify it, and aggregate it so that we can get a much larger picture of people at various ages and in various parts of the country with Down syndrome. This shows you, for example, we post the latest growth charts so that you can look at where your child kind of fits on that progression. It's also a useful thing to take to your doctor. We also have, and I'm always growing, have a terrific healthcare provider list. These are mostly nominated by the families, and that way, say you're moving to a new area or you're visiting grandparents for a while or something along those lines, you can go to this list and see if there's a healthcare provider who knows about Down syndrome in that area. I mentioned printing out your child's medical history. A lot of people say it's very useful. One dad said to me, now I can get rid of that binder. And then this shows you what you can get out of this. You can look, again, not just the growth charts, you can look at demographics, and we have a whole range of things that you can look at and see where your family member fits in. Here's a good example on sleep. That's always a big one. And this shows you about where we have current registrants. When we temporarily shut down, we didn't get rid of our current current registrants, so we do have, it's almost 3,000 now, which is very exciting. We'd ultimately love to have 10,000. We also have a professional portal. Again, that's for the researchers who want to work with us on this, and I already mentioned the process there. That has gone up. We now have about 265 professional researchers. And here's some of the studies that we have already have recruited using DS Connect. As I mentioned, online survey, Dr. Edgen did her big study of sleep. She was having trouble recruiting, and after going with DS Connect, I think she completed recruitment in about 2 weeks. You'll see a lot of there's a phone interview, there's a study of motor function, which is non-invasive. There's different kinds of studies, and that was one of the big messages I wanted to be sure to share with you. This is a separate site. This is an NIH site, so just nih.gov. And if you go on the home page on nih.gov, you will see, you scroll down and you'll see something saying clinical trials. I helped work on this site because, of course, there's lots of clinical trials that NIH funds. We did this specifically for participants in clinical trials. And you'll see that there are a couple of, we have a list of registries, and so DS Connect is listed there. And in addition, we have things like a glossary of terms, because you get in and meet with people and they're throwing around these terms and you're like, what does that mean? So this hopefully will help you. And in addition, we have a list of questions that if you are considering participation in a clinical trial, these are some of the questions you might want to be sure to ask. Because sometimes you get in there and you forget what you were going to ask, you think about it later. This gives you a really nice list of questions to start from. So we wanted to do that to be helpful. We've got a lot of testimonials and the reasons you should participate. So here's what you can do if you decide you want to help us. I have a sign-up sheet out in the hall. It's on the table with the red tablecloth. And I have a couple of flyers, both in English and Spanish, just to help you remember maybe to take it home. And if you want us to send you a reminder, just fill in your email, and we will be happy to let you know as soon as it's back up and running. And you've seen this before. On the left in particular, I wanted to show you, those are all the institutes at NIH that are interested in Down syndrome research, as well as our incredible national partnership. We run the National Down Syndrome Consortium, and Dr. Bull is on it, representing the American Academy of Pediatrics. We have a lot of great groups, because we realized the only way this was really going to progress is if we work together. So thank you very much.